Hey everyone, Linus here. Today we're diving deep into the world of Mac firmware. You might be wondering, Linus, what even firmware? Well, think of it as the brain behind your Mac's brain. It's the low-level software that controls all the essential hardware components, making sure everything plays nicely together. Without it, your Mac would be as useful as a potato. Now, just like any software, firmware can sometimes run into hiccups. Corrupted updates, power issues, or even just plain old bad luck can leave your Mac in a less than ideal state. That's where firmware revival or restoration comes in. It's like hitting the reset button on your Mac's brain, giving it a fresh start and hopefully fixing any underlying issues. But don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. With a little patience and the right guidance, anyone can revive or restore their Mac's firmware. In this guide, we'll walk you through the entire process, step by step, so you can get your Mac back up and running in no time. If you do not have another Mac using macOS Monterey 12.4 or later, you will need to bring your device to an Apple store, and they will help you to revive or restore the affected Mac. So grab your tools and let's get started. Before we jump into the nitty-gritty of firmware revival and restoration, it's important to know to actually do it. After all, you wouldn't want to perform open-heart surgery on your Mac unless it was absolutely necessary, right? So, how can you tell if your Mac's firmware is feeling under the weather? Well, there are a few telltale signs to look out for. The blank stare of death. Your Mac boots up, but the screen remains stubbornly blank. No Apple logo, no login screen, just emptiness. The dreaded exclamation mark. You see a folder with a flashing question mark on your screen. This means your Mac can't find a bootable operating system. The recovery mode. SOS, your Mac boots into recovery mode on its own, or you see a specific flashing light pattern. More on that later. If you're experiencing any of these issues, there's a good chance your Mac's firmware is acting up. But don't panic, it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work. Alright, now that we know we're here, let's talk about what you'll need to perform a firmware revival or restoration. Don't worry, it's not a laundry list of obscure tools or expensive equipment. In fact, you might already have everything you need. Here's the rundown. Your patient, aka your affected Mac. This one's a no-brainer. You'll need the Mac that's experiencing the firmware issues. A trusty sidekick, another Mac. You'll need another Mac running macOS Monterey 12.4 or later to download the necessary firmware. A USB-C lifeline, USB-C to USB-C cable. This will connect your two Macs and transfer the firmware. Apple configurator, maybe. This handy tool is mainly for Macs with a T2 security chip or Apple Silicon. We'll talk more about that later. Once you've gathered your tools, it's time to prepare your Mac for surgery. Figuratively speaking, of course. The exact steps will vary depending on whether you have a laptop or desktop Mac, so let's break it down. Section 4. Prepping your MacBook for firmware recovery. MacBook users, this section's for you. Putting your MacBook Pro or Air into DFU, which stands for Device Firmware Update, mode is the first step towards firmware revival. It's like putting your MacBook into a deep sleep so we can work our magic. Here's how to do it. First, completely shut down your MacBook. I mean completely, not just sleep mode. Next, press and hold the power button and these keys simultaneously. For Option, Command, and R. For just the power button, no other keys needed. Then keep holding those keys down for about 20 seconds. You might see a progress bar or Apple logo appear briefly. That's normal. Finally, if everything went smoothly, your MacBook screen should remain blank. Congratulations, you've successfully entered DFU mode. Now that your MacBook is in DFU mode, we can move on to the main event, reviving or restoring that firmware. Section 5. Getting your desktop Mac ready for firmware magic. Desktop Mac users, this one's for you. Putting your iMac, Mac Mini, or Mac Studio into DFU mode is slightly different from laptops, but just as important. Here's the game plan. First, completely shut down your Mac. No shortcuts here, we need a full shutdown. Next, this might seem obvious, but the power button's location can vary on desktop Macs. Find it before moving on. Then press and hold the power button and these keys simultaneously, for Option and Command. For no additional keys needed, just the power button. Now keep holding those keys down for about 20 seconds. You might see a brief flicker on the screen, that's perfectly normal. Finally, your Mac should remain powered on, but the screen will stay dark. You've successfully entered DFU mode. Now that your desktop Mac is in DFU mode, it's time to breathe life back into that firmware. Section 6. Breathing life back into your Mac's firmware. Alright, we're in the home stretch. With your Mac in DFU mode, you're ready to revive or restore its firmware. But first, a quick clarification. This option tries to repair your existing firmware without erasing any data. It's like giving your Mac's firmware a gentle nudge in the right direction. This option completely erases and reinstalls the firmware. It's the nuclear option, but sometimes it's necessary for a clean slate. Here's the breakdown. First, using your trusty USB-C cable, connect your affected Mac to your second Mac, the one running macOS Monterey 12.4 or later. Next, skip this step, open Apple Configurator on your second Mac. Then, your second Mac will guide you through the rest of the process, either through Apple Configurator or automatically. Now you'll be given the option to revive or restore your Mac's firmware. Choose the option that best suits your needs. Finally, the entire process can take anywhere from a few minutes to an hour or more. Don't interrupt the process, just let it do its thing. Once the process is complete, your Mac will either restart automatically or prompt you to do so. Section 7, mission accomplished, you did it! Congratulations! You've successfully revived or restored your Mac's firmware. That wasn't so bad, was it? Remember, firmware issues can be a real pain, but with a little know-how and a bit of patience, you can overcome them. And hey, if you ever run into trouble, there's a whole community of Mac users out there, myself included, who are happy to help. If you do not have another Mac using macOS Monterey 12.4 or later, you will need to bring your device to an Apple store, and they will help you to revive or restore the affected Mac. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more tech tips and tutorials, and let me know what other topics you'd like to see in future videos. See you next time.